The Imperial Fists were the 7th Legion of the original 20 Space Marine legions, fathered by their Primarch Rogal Dorn. The Legion remained loyal during the Horus Heresy, after which it was reorganized according to the Codex Astartes and divided into chapters. They have maintained an intense rivalry with the Iron Warriors since prior to the Horus Heresy, with whom they share a specialization in siege warfare. The Imperial Fists are recognized to be among the most loyal chapters to the Emperor and have been instrumental in holding the Imperium together during the bleakest of times with renowned stubborn resilience. Because of their service to the Imperium, especially their role in the defense of Terra during the Horus Heresy, the chapter has earned the nickname Defenders of Terra. The Imperial Fists were first organized on Terra as the 7th Legion during the Unification Wars. The Legion was one of the few that recruited entirely from their homeworld and was the only formation to have recruited from across all of Terra, including areas where other legions claimed exclusive rights of tithe. Despite recruiting from such a wide range of locations, 7th Legion recruits consistently possessed a taciturn nature and were quick to action, but reserved in speaking. The Legion participated extensively in the Unification Wars and are noted to have taken the cities of the Crystal Sea, conquered the fortress of the Fifth Circle, and defeated the Windcaller clans in the Himalaya at the expense of 3 battalions. During this time, the Legion earned its first battle honor, Roma. In their first decade of existence, they razed 600 citadels on Terra, and after the campaign ended, veterans of the Unification Wars commonly displayed the campaign's badge on their power armor. They had the benefit of being united with their Primarch shortly after their formation, when the Emperor's fleet recovered Rogal Dorn from the ice hives of Inwit. As a result, Dorn assumed command before their character had yet to fully shape, when as many as 70% of their ranks were still aspirants. This meant that the Legion and their Primarch developed as servants of the Imperium together, forming a strong bond based upon the common desires for self-discipline and total commitment to order, found in Dorn's temperament and the Legion's gene seed. During the Great Crusade, Imperial Fists played a significant role and were driven to conquest. First Captain Sigismund was a prominent voice of Crusade ideology, believing that the Great Crusade was an expression of man's infinite desire to master space, and that maintaining the Imperium would require perpetual war. The Legion espoused a philosophy of victory that held victory was not enough. To conquer one had not only to defeat one's enemies, but to hold the fruits of that victory. According to this view, victory required consolidating power and defending the claim to the conquered society after the conclusion of combat operations. In practice, this typically meant building fortresses and military installations to compel a compliant social order. As a result, the Imperial Fists were considered to be the most direct expression of the Emperor's design of uniting humanity, and were generally regarded as the foundation rocks on which the Imperium was built. The Legion was instrumental in extending control over the Sol system after the Unification War concluded, performing key roles in the Unheard War, the War of the Consus Drift, and the Araneus Wars. During the Unheard War, the Emperor ordered the Bell of Lost Souls tolled for the first time in honor of 50 Imperial Fists who sacrificed themselves to defeat a Psi plague in the Azurite stations. On the plains of Keniatar, the Legion's 5th Battalion broke the lines of the Tyrancy with an arrowhead formation of 50 war machines. The Imperial Fists are noted to have conquered Galabaz, a subterranean city buried in the surrounding mountains. During operations on Ophelia VII, 10,000 Imperial Fists accompanied the Emperor and 100 Adeptus Custodes. At Ascanisa, the Imperial Fists and the Lunar Wolves formed the Emperor's vanguard to break the shrouded dynasties. They would operate closely alongside the Emperor of Mankind throughout the period, serving as the Emperor's personal Praetorians and fighting directly alongside him more than any other legion. Their name was bestowed by the Emperor himself, as their conquests were seen as if the hand of the Emperor had descended and gripped with an unbreakable fist. The Emperor also granted them the right to wear the laurels of victory as part of their heraldry. In their capacity as crusaders, the Legion emphasized their military role in the Great Crusade and eschewed the civil responsibilities of governing worlds for recruitment and other purposes. Dorn is famously recorded as saying, "I want recruits, not vassals." After being granted recruitment rights on Necromunda following a major victory against the Orcs, led by Rogal Dorn himself, the Legion situated itself as guests rather than masters. This attitude contrasted with the approach of other Primarchs, such as Perturabo of the Iron Warriors, who took every opportunity to garrison worlds, claim their tithes, and develop a personal empire. Strategically, they were often employed as a reserve to reinforce fledgling campaigns or to achieve breakthroughs. The Legion rapidly redeployed between battlefields and developed special expertise in siege warfare and mass shock assaults. Offensively, the Imperial Fists employed assault formations, surgically applying force where and when it was required to shatter enemy defenses, often deciding the outcome of campaigns. Defensively, the Legion was commonly tasked to hold strategic positions and defeat enemy breakthroughs. So famous grew their competency in defense that the War Master Horus once remarked to Dorn that if he ever laid siege to the Fists' fortresses, the battle would last forever. The Legion also developed special skills in urban warfare and space operations, including fleet and void warfare. To support its war efforts, the Imperial Fists maintained a fleet of 1,500 warships, a force quantitatively and qualitatively superior to any other Legion. The Legion command and control structure featured theater marshals in charge of all forces in their area of responsibility. Ad hoc commands of castellan and seneschals controlled formations called crusades or households, each comprised of 2 battalions. Infantry unit configuration tended towards the 2 extremes of assault loadouts or long-range heavy weapons. To replenish combat losses, the Legion often recruited from conquered populations en masse. Recorded examples include recruiting every man who could carry a spear from the hunter tribesmen of Tiberna, taking half of the members of the tech brat gangs of Sivan, and the recruitment of every youth older than 10,000 ship cycles from the Nedarin ship clans. As a result, the size of the Legion was recorded as 98,356 Marines just prior to the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, though this figure is not thought to be exact. So effective was this war effort that by the end of the Crusade, the Legion had accumulated a record second only to that of the Lunar Wolves. However, in the course of accumulating honors, the Imperial Fists developed hostile relationships with several other legions, most notably a bitter rivalry with the Iron Warriors, which was largely the result of both legions sharing similar combat specializations. Less known was the strong mutual hatred between the Imperial Fists and Alpha Legion, who clashed on more than one occasion prior to the Horus Heresy, though the nature of these clashes is not well documented. Alongside their rivalries, the Imperial Fists demonstrated a stern disposition, even for the generally stoic Space Marines. Upon first encountering the Imperial Fists, Captain Garrow of the Death Guard remarked that they seem a somber lot, to which Captain Iacton Cruz of the Lunar Wolves responded in the affirmative, adding that he had served with a veteran Imperial Fist for a year-long campaign who never once smiled. The stern character of the Legion earned the Imperial Fists the nickname the Stone Men. After the successful conclusion of the Ulanor Crusade, the Emperor returned to Terra, ordering the Imperial Fists with him, where they were tasked to fortify the Imperial Palace. When the Horus Heresy began, Rogal Dorn and the Imperial Fists were the first loyalists to learn of the War Master's treachery other than those attacked on Isstvan V. This discovery occurred during the Legion's journey back to Terra, when they stumbled on a distress call from the Eisenstein. Upon rescuing the ship, Rogal Dorn discovered loyalist Death Guard Captain Nathaniel Garrow and Remembrancer Mercedes Olaton, who carried news of the betrayal. In response, Dorn ordered the bulk of the Imperial Fists to the Isstvan system, while he and the Legion's veteran companies returned to Terra to inform the Emperor of Horus's treachery. Shortly after splitting ways, both groups faced difficulties from the warp storms that had enveloped the galaxy, which made navigation nearly impossible. After eventually arriving on Terra, Dorn assumed command of the Imperium's armed forces, while the Imperial Fists oversaw the fortification of the Imperial Palace, as well as other duties relating to its defense, such as counterintelligence. The Primarch immediately organized the Imperium's response to Isstvan V, ordering Horus to be confronted on Isstvan V, where his forces were entrenching themselves. After making contact as best as possible with the other legions through the warp storms, Dorn discussed the reasoning of this strategy with Malcador the Sigillite, arguing that decapitating the traitor leadership would cause the revolt to die off. The compliance mission was to be undertaken by the Salamanders, Iron Hands, and Raven Guard, while Dorn assumed the bulk of his own legion would join the assault on their own initiative if they were able to navigate there successfully. This mission would end in a crippling disaster. Underestimating the extent of the heresy, the three legions landed on the planet and were mauled by 8 whole traitor legions, causing the death of Ferrus Manus. At the same time, back in the Sol system, Mars entered into open revolt, endangering the Imperium's access to war material. In response, Dorn ordered 1st Captain Sigismund and Captain Camba Diaz to command 4 veteran companies to secure the forges of Mondus Oculum and Mondus Gamma, which together produced the majority of Astartes' weapons and armor. The Astartes force was accompanied by a number of Imperial army units, including 13 companies of Saturnine hoplites and 4 regiments of Jovian grenadiers, also under the command of the Imperial Fists captains. The operation was met with overwhelming resistance by traitor forces belonging to the Dark Mechanicum. The 2 companies under the command of Camba Diaz were outnumbered 100 to 1, and Sigismund's force of the same size was met by 2 full Titan legions. Facing annihilation, the Imperial Fists withdrew from Mars, abandoning the forges but successfully evacuating at least 12,000 suits of Mark IV power armor and twice as many weapons. The 4 veteran companies involved in the operation suffered heavy casualties and were reduced to half strength. On the other side of the galaxy, the bulk of the Imperial Fists forces were still continuing their attempt to overcome the warp storms and navigate to the Isstvan system as ordered months prior. The force had been completely out of contact with the Imperium since their departure and was unaware of any further developments concerning Horus's treachery, including that the remaining loyalists in Isstvan had been crushed. The fleet eventually regained communication with the Imperium when it received urgent orders to return to Terra after being engaged by a large Iron Warriors force in the Foul system. Both sides suffered serious losses, but in a testament to their discipline, the Imperial Fists fleet successfully disengaged and set course for Terra as ordered. As part of the initial defense of the Segmentum Solar in 6 of M31, Rogal Dorn diverted the 9th and 14th Battalions of the Imperial Fists, the Space Wolves' 13th Great Company, several Terran cohorts of the Imperial Army, and even 3 sodalities of the Legio Custodes to retake the planet Cthonia. Led by Lord Castellan Evander Garius, the traitor surface garrison was quickly overwhelmed and forced to retreat into the underworld to fight a guerrilla campaign. However, as the traitors drew near, a powerful fleet of the Sons of Horus, led by Varen Ashurhaddon and supported by elements of Word-Bearers, Alpha Legion, Chthonian Headhunters regiments, and Dark Mechanicum from Voss, invaded Cthonia in order to reclaim it, beginning thus a second siege. Although the Loyalist forces were well prepared for the traitor attack, the massive traitor fleet was able to beat the Loyalists in orbit and began the assault on the surface of the world. Supported by Thousand Suns, Shattered Legions, and Imperial Army forces, Garius and the Imperial Fists inflicted heavy casualties on the traitor Astartes. The traitors, in turn, managed to cause several losses to the Loyalists, such as the destruction of the majority of their Titan reserves. In 14 of M31, with the traitors gaining ground, Garius prepared to meet them for a final battle at Traitor's Gate Hive. But as the two sides were fighting against each other, a large Dark Angels fleet, led by Marduk Cedras, arrived at the planet's orbit, defeated the traitor fleet, and ordered all sides to stop fighting and leave the planet, unless they wanted to face annihilation, as their Primarch had ordered the traitor homeworld to be destroyed. After both sides made no attempt to heed the order, the Dark Angels began bombarding the planet. Garius, in rage, retaliated by targeting the Dark Angels fleet with the surface defense guns, but did little damage to the capital ships. Later on, the Dreadwing, under orders of Marduk, planted vortex bombs in certain locations of the planet and set them off. As Cthonia was being destroyed by the resulting warp rifts, the remaining forces on the planet began their evacuation and carried their leaders out of the dying planet. With Cthonia fallen, it fell to Rogal Dorn and the Imperial Fists to desperately prepare the defenses of the Sol system. In the subsequent Solar War, the Fists attempted to contain Horus's advance, seemingly defeating the Alpha Legion during the Battle of Pluto in the process. However, ultimately, they failed to prevent Horus from attacking Terra itself. The system had been divided into 5 spheres, each closer to Terra, and each commanded by a different Imperial Fists leader. One by one, the traitors penetrated deeper into the spheres until they eventually arrived at the 5th and final one, Terra, guarded by Dorn himself. During the defense of Terra, the Legion made indispensable contributions to the defense of the Imperial Palace alongside the White Scars and the Blood Angels. The traitors were ground down against the elaborate fortresses and defensive lines of the Fists, and during a critical junction of the battle, the Legion made a massive move to reinforce the palace from the Great Sky Fortress. Despite this, the heretic onslaught was too much to bear, and it was only a matter of time before they were able to break through to the Emperor's inner sanctums. Thus, the Emperor of Mankind opted to confront Horus on his ship, and it is also known that Dorn had the honor of accompanying his father aboard the battle barge. After the boarding, Dorn discovered the bodies of the Emperor, Horus, and Sanguinius, all slain or mutilated by the fight. As the traitors withdrew, the Imperials hurried to entomb the Emperor on the Golden Throne, barely saving the Imperium. Rogal Dorn's grief was immense in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. Whereas other legions, such as the Ultramarines, dedicated themselves to rebuilding the Imperium, the Imperial Fists launched a crusade against the traitor legions, hunting them down and leveling fortress after fortress. They nonetheless remained still cognizant of their broader role, lending themselves to direct calls for assistance by Imperial worlds and institutions more so than other legions during this period. Dorn remained absent from the highest councils of the Imperium until he returned to Terra upon being summoned by Guilliman to be presented with the new Codex Astartes. Dorn initially rejected the Codex Astartes, hating its rigidity and forced splitting of his legion, and as a result, enmity developed between him and Guilliman. Dorn called Guilliman a coward, citing his lack of participation in the defense of the Imperial Palace. Guilliman accused Dorn of being a traitor for refusing the Codex. This divide quickly involved other legions, and a rift developed. Leman Russ of the Space Wolves stood by the Imperial Fists, while Jagatai Khan of the White Scars and Korax of the Raven Guard supported the Ultramarines. A second civil war appeared likely when the Imperial Fists' strike cruiser, Terrible Angel, was fired upon by the Imperial Navy in connection with the Codex crisis. However, Dorn ultimately relented after spending 7 days meditating in the Pain Glove. There, he concluded that the Legion could no longer serve the Emperor who had been and must serve the Emperor who was, which involved accepting the new order of which the Codex was a part. It was Dorn's decision that the Legion would symbolically enter into the Pain Glove together and emerge according to the Codex Astartes. This opportunity presented itself in the battle that became known as the Iron Cage, when the Fists discovered the Eternal Fortress, a 20-square-mile fortress constructed by the Iron Warriors. Dorn, fueled by his enmity towards Perturabo, committed the entire Legion to its assault. Perturabo and his Legion were masters of defense and siege in their own right, and had designed the Eternal Fortress as a trap to ensnare the Imperial Fists. Ceding further advantage to the Iron Warriors, Dorn led the assault without his customary care in planning and preparation. What ensued was a near massacre. Shortly after landing, the Imperial Fists formations were broken, reduced to fighting with combat knives, battle brother by battle brother, in half-flooded trenches with their ammunition expended. Despite this, the Iron Warriors were unable to finish them, lacking the faith to make the ultimate sacrifice that victory demanded. The Ultramarines then intervened, reinforcing the Fists, and together the two legions drove off the traitors. Cleansed by their sacrifice at the Iron Cage, the Imperial Fists immediately began their reorganization with the fully hardened, veteran force that remained. For the next 2 decades, the newly formed chapter went into retreat in order to master the tenets of the Codex Astartes. As part of their reorganization, the Imperial Fists participated in the Second Founding, christening the Soul Drinkers, Black Templars, and Crimson Fists. The Legion's most fanatical battle brothers composed the Black Templars, while the more level-headed members founded the Crimson Fists. Despite the disappearance of Rogal Dorn during the First Black Crusade, the chapter has since assumed a place alongside the Ultramarines as exemplars of the Codex. Secretly, Dorn established a contingency for his successors. Dubbed the Last Wall Protocol, it called for the Imperial Fist successor chapters to reunify into a legion once more should Terra come under dire threat. The protocol was enacted 1,500 years later during the War of the Beast. During this conflict against the Orcs, nearly the entire chapter was annihilated on the world of Adamantua during the war against the Xenarace Chromes. The only known survivor was the badly injured Captain Corland. In the aftermath of the debacle, Corland enacted the Last Wall Protocol, which culminated in the Black Templars, Fists Exemplar, Crimson Fists, Iron Knights, and Excoriators, all rendezvousing at Fall. The Fists and their successors would take the lead in the campaign, saving Terra from an attack moon, recovering the Primarch Vulcan, attacking the Beast's capital of Ulanor, and founding the Death Watch. During the second invasion of Ulanor, Corland was killed by the Beast, and with him, the Imperial Fists became extinct. They would have remained so had Fists Exemplar Chapter Master Maximus Thane not rebuilt the chapter by having each of the Imperial Fists' second founding successors contribute a portion of their strength. Thane became the new chapter master of the resurgent Imperial Fists, concealing the destruction and subsequent rebuilding of the Fists from the larger Imperium. Thane oversaw the final invasion of Ulanor, in which the Beast-class Orcs were all slain. In the aftermath of the war, Thane declared that the Fists would no longer remain sentinel on Terra, but instead embark on the Phalanx in a crusade against mankind's enemies. Shortly after, in what became known as the Beheading, the High Lords of Terra were all slain on the orders of Draken Vangerich, Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. Thane, now Lord Commander of the Imperium, and fed up with the High Lords himself, allowed Vangerich to rule in his stead while he swept the remnants of the Beast's forces from the Imperium. A century later, Vangerich had become too unstable, and the rogue Master of Assassins was slain by a Space Marine strike force of 400 Marines under Thane's command. Only Thane himself survived the campaign, and he led the Fists in a series of campaigns to put down the rebellions that sprang up after Vangerich's death. The Imperial Fists still are a politically powerful chapter in the modern Imperium. Though their homeworld is still technically Terra, in functional terms, the chapter has been fleet-based since being united with their Primarch Rogal Dorn, after which the massive starship Phalanx has served as their mobile fortress monastery. The chapter still emphasizes its historic role as the defenders of Terra and maintains a coded sequence of alerts and signals to coordinate the rapid redeployment of its full forces to reinforce Terra against attack if the contingency arises. The culture of the Imperial Fists articulates their genetically predisposed obsession with willpower and pain into a coherent set of practices concerned with achieving uncompromising self-discipline and maintaining complete order. The chapter remains noted for its stern attitude and appears to outsiders as somber, cheerless warriors, though those who know them better, such as the Blood Angels, recognize their inner passion. Imperial Fists customarily avoid resting on the laurels of past accomplishments and instead find purpose in the performance of additional great deeds. The basic structure of chapter culture is derived from the Junker model of behavior belonging to the ancient Prussic Code of Terra. The model demands dedication to meticulous detail in both military operations and individual conduct. In military operations, fastidious attention to detail is a hallmark of the chapter's superlative planning and preparations. Similarly, every detail of an individual battle brother's conduct is structured by the quest for flawless discipline and the obsession with punishment as penance for the smallest inadequacy, failure, or infraction. The Imperial Fists have developed particular cultural practices that contribute to their obsession with conquering pain and penance. Chief among them is punishment that makes use of a device called the Pain Glove, which is both imposed by superior officers and self-inflicted. The Pain Glove encases the whole body and stimulates pain neurons, causing excruciating pain without inflicting any physical damage. The function of the Pain Glove goes beyond simple punishment in the sense of negative reinforcement and includes positive spiritual value. Marines endure the extreme pain of the device by disciplining themselves to meditate on the glory of Rogal Dorn, thereby perfecting their spiritual communion with their Primarch. So central is pain to the culture of the Imperial Fists that the chapter seems to have developed a philosophy on the subject. As recited by an anonymous chaplain, pain is a lesson that the universe teaches us. Pain is the preserver from injury. Pain perpetuates our lives. It is the healing, purifying scalpel of our souls. Pain is the wine of communion with heroes. It is the quicksilver panacea for weakness, the quintessence of a dedicated existence. Pain is the philosophic vitriol that transmutes mere moral into immortal. It is the sublime, the golden astral fire. The Imperial Fists have created more successor chapters than any other legion besides the Ultramarines. Unlike other legions, the gene seed from the Fists stayed strong and pure, creating a basis for future foundings. Also, unlike other legions and their successors are quite different from each other. It seems that the Marines of the Imperial Fists are quite malleable to the philosophies of their leaders, as their successor chapters like the Black Templars have some of the most divergent structures and beliefs of any of the Astartes. Despite this divergence, it is noted that the Legion's successors form a particularly tightly knit brotherhood of Space Marines, not unlike the successors drawn from the Ultramarines. The chapter retains its previous special ability in siege warfare, urban warfare, and defense, although aggressive rather than defensive operations are preferred. The Imperial Fists also place great value on marksmanship and are renowned for their accuracy with ranged weapons, especially bolt guns, and battle brothers of the chapter spend a disproportionate amount of time in Devastator companies in order to perfect the art of the long-range kill. While a practitioner of the Codex Astartes, the chapter also maintains its own martial tradition, known as the rites of battle. As codified by the scholar Rhetoricus, in the Book of Five Spheres as an addendum to the Codex Astartes. The force structure of the Imperial Fists supports its predilection for siege warfare and high-risk operations. The chapter maintains more siege-related weaponry than any other chapter, including a small army of Thunderfire cannons, Vindicators, and Centurions. The chapter also maintains a reserve of initiates far deeper than any other chapter to replace its combat losses, which at times have included entire companies or more being destroyed at a time. It is a point of pride for the Imperial Fists that the chapter cannot be fully defeated so long as one battle brother remains on phalanx to begin the process of reconstituting even the most grievous attrition. The Imperial Fists also maintain a chapter council composed of the chapter's captains. The full purpose of the council is not clear, but it includes settling disputes between members of the chapter and serving as a court in which the chapter master can hear the cases of the disputants and render his judgment, including punishment for offenses. Possessing large caches of ancient relics, their most prized is the Primarch's recovered fist. Dorn's skeletal fist is kept within the shrine, the bones intricately engraved with the heraldry of all the chapter's previous masters. Only the chapter master has the right to engrave his name upon the bones. Each bone corresponds to a former commander. Despite never recovering his body, the chapter doesn't have a cultural fixation with their father returning for them in the same way the Space Wolves or Salamanders do. Since the fall of Cadia, the Imperial Fists have fought extensively against Chaos and Xenos forces across the galaxy. They have also proved a very valuable asset for the returned Primarch Guilliman, who has used them to shore up Segmentum Solar while his Indomitus crusade pushes back against the enemies of mankind. Come what may, the heirs of the VII Legion will be there to fight to the very end in the defense of mankind. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.